If you're looking for one resounding principle that will totally transform your life forever, today's book club call is for you. It is The Power of One More. It's a great, amazing book by Ed Mylett. Today is our first deep dive into the book. And at its core, The Power of One More is about your willingness to do one more rep, to make one more phone call, to get up 1 hour earlier, to build one more relationship, to take one more step towards your goals. I love the philosophies that he has shared with me so far in the book, and I cannot wait to hear your guys' takeaway as well. So guys, welcome to our Business Leadership Book Club. Super pumped to be back. It feels like it's been forever since we've been here. But this book is one of those books that it takes some time to go through because every single chapter, even though it's super short, has a ton of great, powerful strategies on how you can do just one more. He says, you were not born to be average or ordinary. You were born to do something great, and you can find your best life by doing one more than the world expects of you. I mean, talk about a really powerful underlying perspective. It is a game changer for sure. So what we're going to do is we are going to be diving into the book. I think we have from chapter 1 all the way through chapter 9. It's been a while since we had a book club. I want to go through every chapter in terms of what spoke loudest to me. We're not going really deep into the book. I do want to hear from you guys as we go. I know some of you guys are here. You don't have the book. That's totally okay. If you remember some of the philosophies and things that really stuck out to you, I do want to hear them as we go. But let's dive right into the introduction. Now, when it comes to this book, he says the power of one more is the culmination of a philosophy that he's been developing for more than 30 years. He said, I've learned, and you will too, that one more thing is often all it takes. And frequently, it's the only one more step away, that we are only one more step away from where we are right now to having massive success. And I love this underlying principle here. And that's because if you have this philosophy of like, I'm just one more away, it's going to get you to continually take the actions above and beyond what you typically would, but also what the world kind of like expects of you. And what's crazy is just how much I've seen people get right up to the edge and they don't take that one more step. And that one thing would have been that thing that took them over the ledge. And that's what we're going to be diving into today. But we're going to be diving into several different ways of using this one more strategy in multiple areas of your life. So good morning, Aaron and Ed and Amber and Randall. It's great to have you guys here with us. And we're diving right into one more identity. So this is chapter number 1. Now, if you had a piece of this that spoke loudest to you, I want to hear about it. As we go, I'm going to talk what spoke loudest to me in this chapter. And I want to see if you guys agree with me or you disagree. And that's totally cool to disagree as well. And how he starts off this chapter is they always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. That's by Andy Warhol. He says, what exactly is identity? I define it as the thoughts, concepts, and beliefs we hold as the most genuinely parts of our inner being. You can put on a face or act a certain way for the rest of the world, but you can't lie to yourself. When it comes to these things deep inside, you know what's true about you. Now, the way that he described this and the way that it really connected with me is he said, you adjust your identity thermostat. So when you think about like you leaning into your one more identity, he says, your internal thermostat sets the conditions of your life. He said, let's say you walk into a room and if it's too hot or too cold, you look for a thermostat to adjust the temperature to what you like. It doesn't matter what the external conditions are. The temperature can be 100 degrees outside, but if the thermostat is set to 75 degrees, it kicks on and the air conditioner cools down the temperature and regulates the environment. This same applies when it's 30 degrees outside. The thermostat kicks in and warms your surroundings to your 75 degrees. But your life works exactly the same way. If you're a 75-degree person, you turn on the air conditioners of your life and cool it back down to what you think you're worth. This is what happens every time your results begin to exceed your identity. You don't realize it, but you unconsciously turn on the air conditioners of your life and cool it back down to what you believe you deserve. Man, that is super powerful. And I really for me, my brain goes to this whole idea of like self-sabotage. It's one of these things where when I help coach people, whether it's in business, in relationships, you kind of see that they move their version of self-sabotage from one area to the next, to the next, to the next. And they get to that point where they're about to break through, but their brain convinces them to cool down their thermostat, to turn on their air conditioner, to really get back down to reality. Have you ever heard yourself say that? Like, I've just got to get back into my norms. And what you don't realize is it's that temperature where it's set right now that literally will be the game changer for you. But we do whatever we can to self-sabotage, to get back into our old habits, and to really cool down that internal temperature. He's like, much like a thermostat, your identity regulates your internal self-worth. It regulates your actions and your results. Many people are under the false assumption that external factors are what regulates your thermostat. They believe that getting a promotion, getting married to the love of your life, or getting an advanced degree from college is what determines our identity. But if you don't raise your identity, then eventually you will turn the air conditioner back on sooner or later, and the temperature will drop back down to 75 degrees. He said, however, if your thermostat is set to the right way, it will transcend conditions and you will find success no matter what the external conditions are. I love that part. I mean, I highlighted almost the entire part of the first chapter, but the way that kind of like sits in terms of like the analogy for me is like, man, I've got to make sure that I keep my internal temperature set to high, but also I make sure that the environment that I'm in also has their temperature set to high. It's also why I make sure I hang out with certain people and I don't hang out with other people, because I feel like other people can do a disservice to you and make your temperature go cooler, or even if you're in the right environment, make it go a little bit warmer. So it's one of those things where if you are hanging out with the right people, they actually bring your temperature up as opposed to bringing it down, and vice versa. So I love that idea and that analogy of how we can make sure that we can set ourselves up for the most success. That being said, I want to hear back from you guys. Based off of that, what spoke loudest to you in the chapter about identity? Maybe it's something I shared right now or something else, but I do want to hear what about your identity really stuck out to you, and what are some actions that you can take to make sure that you're focusing on that one more identity, one more degree, one more head in the direction that you want to head. Chapter number 2. By the way, I am always looking at the chat for you guys. Chapter number 2 is one more and living in your matrix. What he talks about is Neo in the Matrix. He speaks of the one. By the way, this is a little mini presentation I gave for the Dad Edge because this one really struck a chord with me. But what he says is, speaking of the one, I want you to realize something. When you see a happy or financially successful family, understand that at some point in their history, they weren't happy and they weren't successful. That is, until the one showed up and the one in that family changed the family tree forever. The one can change the emotions, the finances, the level of happiness, and the way the family thinks, among many other things. In my family, I am the one. Not because I wanted to or I liked it, but because I was ready to fight for it and because I learned the strategies it takes to be the one. He says, my prayer for you is to become the one in your family. The reason I love the story of Neo being the one is because I believe it's a metaphor for what exists in every family. It bears repeating. When you see a family that is happy, successful, or living out their dreams, understand that they did not start out that way. And then the one, that person in their family that stepped up, they changed the family legacy forever. I love this underlying philosophy of reminding myself like, hey, I'm going to be the one. I'm willing to fight. I'm willing to put in that energy. I'm willing to put in that effort so that I don't pass on certain demons. I make the change that my family needs for the rest of their life. When I think about that, it actually gets me into like this different heart space where I have to show up, and not just half like I'm forcing myself, but like I feel compelled to, because this is the reason why I feel like I was put on this planet. Powerful when he talks about this one. And it was a reminder that that I know all of you guys are that one. And are you willing to fight to be that one and to prove it to the world? Not only to prove it to the world, but also to model that behavior so that other people can be inspired by you being the one. Okay, now he talks about the matrix, obviously other than the one, but he also talks about the matrix. He talks about it related to the reticular activating system. It's RAS for short. This is kind of like what he believes to be his version of the matrix. It's something where if you're a life coach, what you focus on grows is like usually a lot of times what people like think about is like, if I think about what's broken, wrong, or missing, I actually will create and manifest what's broken, more, wrong, or missing, more of that. But if I focus on like very something specific about what I want and what I want to create and what I want to manifest in the world, I will also be able to find out like what the potential and the purpose and the hope and the love like that I want to put out in the world. You will actually find that you're putting more of that out, and it's because what you focus on grows. Now, what he talked about in here is it reminded me actually of my police career, and when they would say, hey, Mark, there is a stolen blue Toyota Camry, and here's the license plate of it. Can you look out for it today? I would see a ton of blue Toyota Camrys everywhere I go. I'm like, there's one, there's one, there's one. And what's crazy is there wasn't any more that day that were out. It's just that I primed my brain to find those things out there. And what you focus on, if I focused on blue Toyota Camrys, I found a ton of them. But if I focus on something else entirely different, like white pickup trucks, I would see all of the white pickup trucks. Even though the blue Toyota Camrys were still there, I never saw them. This is also why, like as a life coach, me programming in my brain a certain question, like if I ask somebody who's like an entrepreneur and they're wanting to excel in their business and excel in their personal life, or somebody who's like wanting to excel in their police career and with their connection at home with family, I plant seeds of questions in here that they don't need to have the answer for, but it really programs it to now open up your reticular activating system to go out and to find the answers, right? So how is a way that you could achieve more in your business without having to do more? Now I plant that seed in there. Now somebody is going to be able to find it because now their brain wants to find that answer and they're looking for the answer. As long as they don't say that's not possible, but they're like, hey, there is an answer. Maybe I don't have it right now. Their brain is going to go out to solve that problem. It's going to look at all the podcasts and the books and all the different things that come across, and you're going to be able to find it if you're willing to plant the seed and believe that the answer is out there. And that's really how that reticular activating system works. It says your RAS is your brain's natural filtering system. Can you imagine if every single car that came by, you're like, oh, that's a white Prius. Oh, that's a blue this. Oh, that's a, like you would be like overloaded, right? So it's like, program me with what to find. Unfortunately, when we don't understand life coaching, we don't understand leadership, we don't understand what's going on in here, we actually start to find more of what's broken, wrong, or missing because it's going to keep us safe, right? We see a big headline on like, oh my God, this is what's happening political-wise, or this is what's happening like terrorist-wise, or it's very easy for our brain to now be focusing on all of those bad things, right? They were there all the time. But also there's a bunch of amazing things that you could focus your brain on, but it's too hard to like pull it away until you understand how to like really refocus that. And refocusing your reticular activating system is a game changer. And figuring out how to do that, for me, it's life coaching. For me, it's like understanding the philosophies of asking really, really great questions. And if that's not for you, that's cool, but find a way of being able to program your reticular activating system to find more of what you want to create in the world. He says, when you intentionally activate your matrix to focus on certain things, you'll see one mores everywhere. He said, here's a one more thinker key takeaway. When you can train your matrix to take your subconscious thoughts and marry them to your consciousness, you become intentional. He said, I talk a lot about being intentional, and now you know how and why the process works. Because you focus on your subconscious mind, which is the thing that's really running in the background, right? What you're trying to focus on, with your conscious mind. I remember somebody asked one time inside of a training that I was in, like, how do you know if you're being intentional and being present? And I remember the person, Larry Hagner, he was like, well, I really think about being intentional in terms of like your senses. So what do you see right now? What do you hear right now? What do you smell right now? What do you taste? Probably not, but what do you touch? What do you feel right now? And when you can bring yourself back to the 4 out of 5 senses, you can go, okay, I'm sitting in this chair, like I'm just breathing like really good air. Thank goodness I have my window closed because there's some people outside that were smoking earlier and I could smell that, right? And it just puts me into a different space. But also, what do I hear? I can hear my puppy like whining for me to go downstairs, and like make sure that I'm here intentional when I think about my 4 out of 5 senses can really bring me into this conscious place right now, right? But when we marry that to this subconscious thought of like, what am I looking for? What is the answers that I'm trying to seek? You'll be able to find those because your senses are heightened, and you'll be able to like see them when they present themselves. Because all these things, guys, present themselves all the time. even on my channel here, even on YouTube, all the different ideas and philosophies, all these things get presented to you a million times, but it's not until you're seeking them that you find them. And when you find them, they change your life forever. But if you never seek them, if you never programmed in there's an answer, all of these things will completely like flow by, just like they did for me for decades. And then I hear the thing like the 100th time, but I was ready to accept it. I was willing and open because my reticular activating system was looking for the answers. And that's when I found it. But it had been there all the time. It's crazy when you think about it that way. A lot of the answers that you are seeking right now have been in front of you numerous times, that you have been unwilling to open your mind to it. It's crazy when I think about that, because I know it's the same thing for me. All right, so that was number 2. Chapter number 2. Where's everybody, by the way? You guys just listening? I want to hear some feedback from you guys. What is your biggest takeaway from chapter number 2 when it comes to the matrix, when it comes to living in your matrix and being the one? Are you guys the one? Are you the one who's going to change your lineage forever, your family forever, and literally be remembered? Okay, number 3 is one more try. He says, if you want to achieve anything meaningful in your life, the strategy you must master is one more try. He says, when you act and do the same things as everyone else, you'll get the same results as everyone else. When you implement a one more try mentality, though, that's where you'll find your greatest successes and your most significant personal growth. I like that philosophy just because I know that in business, in personal life, in relationships, in marriage, in whatever, it's all about asking yourself, like, what does everybody else do? And how can I either do one more or do something else entirely different? I mean, so many people are like, they get frustrated because sometimes business can be a little bit, it can feel a little hard. And it's like, I actually like that it's hard, because if it wasn't so hard, so many people would not give up, and then everybody would have a business, and like we wouldn't have people who shine through that, right? So instead, like, it's hard for a reason, because there's people who are willing to do just enough work to get up to the end and then not take that next step. And then there's the rest of us, people who are here on this call, who are willing to keep stepping the next step, the next step, the next step until it actually does work. And that's what makes it possible for people to be that one, because you're willing to do those things beyond what people are typically are going to give up. He says another critical component to this is, even though you may be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do, you must be intentional and look for opportunities in everything you do. That mindset must become second nature to you. When you practice this strategy long enough, it becomes a reflex. You don't think about it, you just do it. That's really when you realize that it's gotten into your subconscious mind, guys, is when you don't have to think about it anymore, you just do it. And yes, it takes some time. It takes some reprogramming. That's just the way that our belief system kind of works. But if you're willing to do that one more try, to take one more rep, to take one more step, to make one more call, that's where the real true growth, especially the massive growth, happens. Okay, Randall says strategically slow down. I've realized that without seeing things differently, I see some missed opportunities, the one mores. Yes, Randall, 100%. I know for a lot of us high achievers, we feel like just do, work. And that's where we're going to be able to like really, in the end, like make up any ground and really excel. But if we're constantly working, we're not open to finding a new way of doing it, right? Can you imagine if we had just been forcing the same things that we had been forcing for like ever and didn't realize that there's a different way, a different approach of doing things, right? I mean, even like for cars, for example, like if we had just forced, like you have to have a car in order to be able to travel, and we didn't even think about planes, right? Or we didn't think about many other different avenues, right? It would have just like really held back everyone, because we have just been putting our head down and working. There's like a really great dichotomy there of like, yes, you should put your head down and work, but also like disconnect every once in a while. Do that refresh and see if there's another way of doing it, another way of thinking about it that would actually help benefit everyone. I always find, I don't know what you guys think, but I always find like when my ego pushes back the most, when it says, this is the way that we have to do it, this is the way that we've always done it, this is the only one right, best only way, that's when I know, wait, Mark, your ego's coming up. It's time to approach this a different way, right? Even having a conversation with somebody like my kids or anything, like when I get that feeling, it's like, wait, this is an actual opportunity to see things a little bit differently. And as long as I can take a breath and lean into it, lean into the discomfort, it totally changes the game, and also changes a lot of relationships. So Aaron has never seen The Matrix. Can I still call myself the one? No. Aaron, you're not. You can't. You're absolutely not. Aaron, where have you been? Just watch the original one. You need to. Ed says, I am the one. Ed, I believe you that you're the one. 60 days left in the year to finish this year. Tremendous momentum for 2024. Yes. And you are the one, Aaron. You are the one, but you still need to watch that. Okay. And I feel like I am means that you are. It's one of the things, like when people think about like being the one. I remember hearing Ed talk about this. He's like, when you have this thought of like, maybe I'm not, it's actually evidence that you are. Because if you weren't the one, you wouldn't even be thinking about it. It wouldn't even be something that you're challenging, right? And so the mere fact that you're thinking about it and contemplating it makes you the one. All right, chapter number 4. One more in the 5 principles of time management. I think I actually highlighted the 5 principles in here. Let's go. By the way, this one was really crazy. It kind of racked up my brain a little bit about how he, instead of having 24 hours in one day, he actually has 3 days, and he breaks it up into one day, so he actually get 3 times as much stuff done. That was pretty crazy. It's definitely something I'm gonna take a look at. But let's look at these ideas that he has. So number 1 is add more days to your day. So instead of having a 24-hour day, he breaks it up into 3 separate mini days throughout the day. I think it's like an 8-hour block, an 8-hour block, an 8-hour block. Actually, no, I think it's like a 4-hour block, a 4-hour block, and a 4-hour block. So basically in those 12 hours, he has 3 different days. And the way that this makes sense to me is that it's kind of like that Parkinson's law. Like however much time you have to do that thing is how much time you'll take to do it. But if you separate it and you say, nope, I only have these 4 hours to do it, it's crazy how our brains are now forced to think of different ways and different ideas and get creative and don't get off track because we're like, we have to get it done in this period of time. And it's the same thing with that. Like if you crunch it all into this period of time, you're only going to do the things that are the most important at that point. Second thing is approach time with a greater sense of urgency. So creating that urgency, saying, I just have this amount of time. This is the only amount of time that I have, will help you run faster and further. Number 3 is learn how to control time instead of time controlling you. He says, when you manage your time with a sense of urgency, you become the master instead of the servant. Moving faster puts you in control of your time more than not, and you have a sense of urgency, but you also have a greater say in what you think is important. That lets you spend more time on what's meaningful and rewarding to you. One of the things that people come to us all the time for is like the whole time management and balance piece. They're like, I want to be able to excel in my business or in my career, but I also want to take care of my health, and I also want to have hobbies, and I also want to have this incredibly legendary marriage and also great connection with my kids. And I'm like, you absolutely can, but you have to identify what moves the needle the most. And we talk about the 80-20, but really it's the things that you do that move the needle the most and the things you do that move the needle a little bit, but they don't actually need to be done because it's not where you get the most connection. It's not where you get the most business. It's not where you get the most leadership abilities. Is from the things that you do, like the 20% of activities that produces the 80% of results. So really being able to identify that. And as you grow as a leader, those change. Can we all agree? Somebody who has $1 million business is doing something different than somebody who has $100 million business, right? How about somebody who has $1,000 business, $1,000 a month business versus somebody who has a $50,000 a month business? They do entirely different things. Like if you're in the same day-to-day that you are in $1,000 a month, that you are in $50,000 a month, you're going to burn out. It's not going to be possible to sustain it, right? But you have to think of things differently, and you have to ask yourself, okay, at this point, do I need to readjust the things that I'm doing, the things that move the needle the most, the things that I get some outside resources from to help, right? And as you go, as long as you're willing to adjust it as you go, you'll see that sometimes you'll get a little bit of pushback because maybe you've grown to that next level, but you haven't readjusted your activities. And when you do that, it is a game changer. Number 4 is measure your performance often. He says, where performance is measured, performance improves. Close proximity to measurement is critical. Every leading motivational organizational expert from Zig Ziglar to Peter Drucker builds the idea into their foundation strategies for a simple reason. Measuring performance works, right? What you measure will automatically get improved. Now, I don't want to say it automatically get improved, but when you measure it and you continually measure it, your brain goes into how can I continue to increase this, or can I continue to take these actions, right? And by being able to do that, as opposed to just closing your eyes and just hoping that it happens, you actually have an idea of what's working and what's not working versus just throwing things on the wall and seeing what sticks and having no way of measuring it. So measuring it, especially when it comes to your time, is a game changer. And then he says, changing others' perception of you. When you incorporate the 5 principles of time management in your life, how others see you is going to change too. When people see you no longer wasting time, they begin to not waste your time. They see you're also no longer spending too much time taking care of other people's priorities because you're too focused on taking care of your own. This is a huge thing that we should all realize, not only before, but also afterwards, is your relationship to certain people, to friends, to people you're close to. When you start becoming the one more person, that it's going to change a little bit because you're changing yourself at an identity level and they're used to you being and acting and showing up in a certain way. And if you start to change, it sometimes challenges them. Not only challenges them to change, but kind of challenges them to be like, oh, I want the old person back. I want the old Mark. And it can very easily get us off track thinking that change is bad, which is crazy, right? Question, when somebody asks you, Ed, man, you've changed. What is your initial response? How does that feel in your body when somebody says that? What's crazy when somebody says that, I'm like, fucking thanks. Thank you. Thank you for calling that out because like literally I didn't want to stay the same. I had to change to get to where I am. And I appreciate you for calling that out because that's the path that I'm on. Doesn't mean they can't come with me, but it also doesn't mean I'm going to stay where they're at just to make them feel comfortable and also to feel the feeling of regret when I get to the end of my life, right? It's like, yes, I have changed. Thank you for that. And thank you for pointing it out, right? And it's just a different perspective, but thinking about change and how that happens and what happens when you sort of feel like you're leaving people behind. Remember, we don't leave people behind. They just decided not to get on the bus with us. But at any time that they want to, you got the bus. You're driving around the bus stop. They can come out to the bus stop and get picked up, right? That's how I like to always frame it, because when I started treating time differently, people started treating my time differently too. They didn't ask for it as much. I wasn't there to just put out their fires. And when they did that, it like totally transformed some of our relationships, but it also got some of the people in my life to not have more conversations with me. And for me to have more conversations with people who did respect my time. And it was a game changer when it comes to like the time and people asking for it, especially if you're a people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, when you change your perspective of time and you respect your time, you'll notice that other people start respecting it too, and they'll stop asking you for things because normally it's so hard to say no, right? But when you start having those boundaries in place, it'll make it so much easier for you to say no in the future. All right, number 5. We're going to speed this up, by the way, guys. It's already been a half an hour. Number 5 is one more emotion. He says, it's not the caliber of the people, these people's homes, cars, or other material possessions that determines the quality of their lives. It's the quality of their emotions. You have an emotional home that you live in. How you fill this home with the emotions you choose is the reality of your life, more than anything else. He said, your goal should be to feel specific emotions in your emotional home, regardless of the external factors in your life, such as having a certain kind of job, living in a certain kind of house, or driving a certain kind of car. The amazing thing is that when you have your emotional house in order, you're more likely to get that job, house, and car. So many people think that if they get those things, they'll feel the positive emotions associated with reaching those goals. One more thinkers flip-flop that sentence. One more thinkers get intentional daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly with putting their emotional homes in order and deciding what emotions they most want to experience. As a one more thinker, ask yourself, what are the 5 or 6 emotions I most want to experience this? That I most want to experience. It says when you do this, the reticular activating system in your brain will go to work finding those circumstances that will create more of those emotions for you. Once activated, harmful emotions will be decommissioned and replaced with positive emotions that fully activate the best version of you. I love that. I love that. Love that. One more piece about this chapter, though, the power of emotions. A lot of times we do things, not a lot of times, almost all the times we do things because of a feeling. And we are wanting to feel a certain way, and we think that doing those things will make us feel that way. Another thing that we do is we will avoid doing certain things because we don't want to feel that way. We try to, like what we call buffer, right? When you're supposed to be doing something that's in alignment with your goals and you're doing something just the opposite, it's because you don't want to feel the emotion of what it's going to feel like to do that thing. And he has a really good thing here about all emotions have a purpose. He says, like positive emotions, negative emotions are a valuable source of cognitive information to help you understand what's going on around you. They help you identify threats and to be on guard against possible dangers. But negative emotions are an essential counterbalance to help you see both sides of the situation. One of the things that I don't do as a life coach is just become somebody's cheerleader. I want to make them aware of the negative thoughts and the negative feelings that they're having, because that's a part of life. If anybody has ever heard me taught inside of our life coach certification, is life is 50-50. There's 50% positive experiences and emotions and actions, and there's 50% negative experiences and emotions and actions and the set of facts. And the truth is like you need one to have the other. You can't have the dark if you don't have the light and vice versa, right? And so realizing that everybody has a version of 50-50, your 50-50 is different than my 50-50, which is different than my mom's 50-50, but it's still your 50-50. Nobody's is worse or better or nicer than anybody else's. It's just how we deal with it that's the game changer. And when we realize that these negative feelings, negative emotions, and things that happen actually have a way of teaching us how to lean into the opposite side, we no longer become attached to that emotion and we disassociate from that, so we can lean into the power of our heart, the power of like what we feel like we were meant and created to do here. And it helps us to take the actions that we want to take because it's in congruence with the way that we feel. But it's not running from it. It's being able to emotionally understand it, why I felt that way, process it a little bit, and then tap into your heart so you can continue to like build that into your subconscious mind so you don't have to think about it anymore. You can just go there, which is the exact same reason why he wrote this book. The power of one more is a subconscious thought that he wants you to plant into your belief system to go, how could I do one more? What's, one more action that I can take? What's one more step? And when you see it in these multiple different areas, you're like, wow, how can I like employ that in multiple areas? Because that'll be the system that is running in the background. And I mean, like he says, it's a total game changer when you can do that. All right, number 6 is one more association. He says, when you fine tune your associations, you allow yourself to transform your actions and radically enhance your results. You could be one association away from changing your entire life. As a one more thinker, you have an obligation to keep refining your peer groups of friends, family members, so they can continue to add to your thoughts, goals, standards, and outcomes. One of the most powerful dynamics in the world is to be productive and blissful in ways your peer group expects of you. The bottom line is this: you may need to either change or expand who you associate with, because who you allow into your inner circle is critical. And you must cultivate and invest in these people as a means of investing in yourself. There's a reason why not only do I have this YouTube channel and this YouTube community, our inner circle, but also our book club. Because making sure that you're in that environment, that you're making those associations, that you're hanging out with other people who want to grow, leaders who are hungry, business owners who want to just make a huge impact in the world, it's so much easier to take on the actions of the people that you're surrounding yourself with, right? So when we think about one more association, like it could be that one other person that you wanted to reach out to. It could be that one person who made that post. It could be that person who's sitting, when you're going to like an actual live event, it's that person who's sitting on the other side that you hear and you're getting the pull to go over there and to introduce yourself. You are just one association away. How can you most connect with someone that could literally not only change your life, but also change their life too? One of the beliefs that I planted for a Dad Edge conference that I went to last week was, I'm just going to go there and I'm going to see how I can help people as much as possible by leaning in and coaching people and helping them see different perspectives. And by doing that, I was like, the introverted in me is like, Mark, just sit here and like, don't introduce yourself. But I got up. I was introducing myself. I was spending like 12 hours with humans, asking them questions and really diving in. And so many people came up to me afterwards and they were like, I don't know what you did here, but that was awesome. Like, how do you do that? How do you like summarize and put those questions together and ask me and get me to feel that way? And it was like a really great entry into what would have happened if I had not been willing to get up and make that one more association. Like, it pains me to think that they would have not been able to see what I was able to see and help them see it from a different perspective, because you only need one perspective change. I mean, maybe that's another one. You only need one perspective change that could change and transform your life forever. And if that's that opportunity and I hadn't given it, I would have felt like I had let people down. So reminding myself that I'm only one more association away has always helped me. Definitely helped me this last week to be able to make that additional, not only request, but reach out and associate and start a new association. There we go. All right. Number 7. One more dream. One more dream. He says, children are dreamers. Their imaginations are the rules of their dreams. They're naturally curious. These things make children the happiest people on earth. And they're also great teachers too. He says the happiest people in life operate out of their imagination and dreams, not in their histories. There is no way you will experience your best life if you try to operate out of your history or memories of your past. It can't be done. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. When I give, when I'm giving someone what we call a breakdown session, where we help them identify specific goals they're looking to achieve, it's very easy for all of us to go, well, this is what I've ever done. This is what I've ever had. So most likely I'll be able to achieve this thing, and they don't dream. They just make it be in alignment with like, oh, maybe a little bit more than I've been doing. And when you have just a little bit more, and that's what your goal is, you will never think outside the box to like exponentially blow that goal out of the water. But when you think like, wow, like there's just like, what if I lean in and I make that little bit of a change and instead lean into dreaming and thinking about if I could paint a picture a year from now, what would my life look like? You get to actually go there. You actually get to experience it, and you get to bring that with you now through your journey. You don't have to wait until it happens. You can actually go to that place right now. One of the things that we do and teach inside of our life coach certification is how to do that, how to walk somebody through what do they want to be able to achieve. Like if you were to wake up a year from now, what would your life look like? Where would you wake up? When would you wake up? Who would you be with? Where would you be at? How much money is in your bank account? How many people's lives have you impacted? How many messages on your social media thanking you for, helping them with X, Y, and Z? And when you can literally paint that picture of what it would look like, it helps you because now you can reverse engineer the actions that it's going to take to get there. And it's not just doing the bare minimum or a little bit more. It's like, how can I think outside the box? And when you're able to do this and dream a little, you'd be so amazed at how, like we say in life coaching, is like you have all of the answers already living inside of you. As long as you're willing to ask yourself the tough questions to get them to come out, because they're buried in there somewhere, and they're buried in there with your past trying to hold it down. But when you can eliminate that, when you can like lean and think about it a little differently, you will come up with some really incredible answers that you never knew were in there. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an idea. Like when I was inside of it was a business mastermind, one of the instructors was like, I want you to go out 5 years from now and just paint a picture of what are some of the things you're doing. What are some things you love the most? It could be something related to what you're doing now. He's like, but I want you to dream a little. I want you to think even outside the box. And when I was doing that, I don't know why, I was like writing all these things. And then I just remember myself writing, and I'm going to teach other coaches how to coach people too. Back then, I didn't have my own life coach certification. Back then, I didn't even fathom. I was just like, hey, I'm just trying to become better so I can help coach more people. And what's crazy is a year from then, I actually got approached by my mentor, was like, hey, you want to create a life coach certification with me? And it was crazy how that actually happened, but I don't think it would have happened, or I wouldn't have been open to it if I hadn't dreamed and went there first. So dreams aren't necessarily for what you to create right now. Dreams are also for putting it out into the world, because when you think about like what the end goal is going to be, once again, your reticular activating system is going, how can we make that happen? And it works out really crazy things that would have been there the whole time, but you wouldn't have been open to them. And so when you can plug that in here, when you can dream a little bit, your brain will go about setting and finding the ways to make that actually happen. It's crazy how the brain works like that. All right. Number 8 is one more question to ask ourselves. Oh, my favorite. My favorite. Okay. He says, do you ever think about what you think about? This is a really powerful question I asked. It's one of many questions I'm going to ask you in this chapter, and a question you should be asking yourself. Do you ever think about what you think about? He says, the truth is most people never do. Most people never take control of their thoughts because they don't ask the right questions. So they have a flawed belief of what their thinking should be. That leads to an equally fundamental question. What is thinking? He says, simply put, thinking is the process of asking and answering the questions of yourself. That's how thoughts work. You constantly ask and answer questions in your head thousands of times a day. Sometimes I'm overloaded by the number of questions my brain asks. But it's the kind and type of question that you ask that matters the most. Now, I talk about on this channel that we help entrepreneurs become modern leaders. We also help parents become modern leaders. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we make sure that we understand the philosophies of true coaching, which means we ask really powerful questions to help people come to their conclusions, not to convince or guide or try to scam them into the direction we want them to go. Instead, we get really great at asking questions. That, my friends, also includes asking yourself questions. Let me give you a real quick crash course, right? If you ask yourself, what is wrong with me? Why isn't anything working? What's going on? How can you think of a positive answer to that? What's wrong with me? Why do I always do this? You're asking yourself a question that there's no possible positive answer, heart-based answer, and you're trapping yourself because you're asking yourself a terrible question. And what we can do as coaches and leaders is go, that's not a great question. How about if I plug a better question in there, right? What can I do better next time? If I could do this all over again, what would I do differently? These are different questions you can use to tap you into your heart. Now, I want to give you an example. And I want you to use this one if you haven't yet. Sorry. I want you to use this one with your family today. I want you to ask them, what made you smile today? Now, if you've never asked them a question like this, they may look at you kind of weird, but I really want you to explore this a little bit. What made you smile today? Now, the reason why I said that, the reason why I actually asked that question is because what I'm doing is I'm planting a belief in you that something made you smile, and I want you to find it, and it's in here. So really tap into that. And so when people do that, when you ask a question like that, sorry, my camera is like falling down. When you ask a question like that, it will force them to literally be able to get this camera. There we go. It will force them to be able to find those answers because there is something that made them smile that day. And when you ask them in that way, they have to go back into their brain to find out what made them smile. Because if we said, hey, did you smile today? There's an out. Your brain will take the out every single time. But if you ask them, what made you smile today? It will totally change the game because their answers can't just be one-word answers. And what's great is when you ask them that question, they will literally be able to go back into that specific situation that happened and re-experience it again. So when you ask them that question, you get to give them a great gift of experiencing what made them smile. And it's awesome when you can do that. All right, last chapter, chapter number 9. One more goal. And this isn't the last chapter of the book. It's just the last chapter for today, okay? So one more goal. He says, throughout our lives, we've been inundated with systems, philosophies, and methods about how to set goals, how to make your life better. And there's definitely no shortage of resources on the subject. He said, too often, though, goals aren't designed as a conscious decision to improve your life. Often, we set goals as a reaction or a response to something that is happening in our life. Instead of playing defense, the key is to proactively fill your mind with the right kind of thoughts about your goals. When you do, your entire being is invigorated to accomplish these goals. He says that's because the mind always gravitates to what is familiar with it and draws in whatever resources are necessary to propel you forward. What you think leads to what you need. When you consciously access what you need, your mindsets about the business of making your goals, your mindsets about the business of making your goals a reality. He says, creating goals in your peak state. This is one that I highlighted because it's something that when I'm on a coaching session, I put them into a peak state so I can ask them these questions. I do that during my coaching sessions on purpose because I want them to be in a peak state because you can really function on a different level when you're in your peak state. He says you can only create your best goals when you're at your peak state. This state occurs when your mind and your body are functioning optimally together. Breaking it down further, think of your thoughts as your conscious mind and your body as your subconscious mind. When your conscious and your subconscious mind work in congruency, you have a powerful force that multiplies, and heightens your peak state. Now, here's one of the things. A lot of people don't understand that for us, when it comes to our life coach certification, we have this literally built in because we want to make sure that you get people into their peak state when you're asking them tough and challenging questions. And it's not something that we don't just ask a question just out of the blue. It's more of like we design a very specific route to take someone because when you do and their mind and their body is in alignment with what it is you're saying, like things click. Have you ever had that where you sit down to do something and it just seems so difficult and daunting, but yet you've had another moment where maybe you've thought about that very specific thing and everything clicks and flows? I really want you to check out what got me into the peak state to make everything click and flow. And what are some of the things that I'm doing or thinking really that is not getting me into that peak flow? Sometimes it's just as simple as that, is realizing when I do this, this, and this is what sets me up for that peak flow, for me to be able to like come up with an infinite number of ideas. And then you can recreate what that is and move it forward, right? Rather than just going with it and trying to force it, instead asking yourself, what can I do to set myself up for that peak state? If you have a life coach and they're a good life coach, they're going to be able to do that for you, where they tap into your heart voice and then they ask you those tough questions, not because they want to ignore them, but because they want you to be in a peak state so that you can answer them with your heart, not with your head. I mean, I actually saw it yesterday. We were giving a training for like 70 different people who are interested in joining our life coach certification, and how easy it is to ask somebody what they want to achieve. And then they, instead of asking or dreaming a little, they stop and they tell you all the things that they don't want and why it's not possible for them. And it's like, man, it is so easy if you don't understand how to ask great questions, how to set somebody up positively, how to get them into their heart, for them to just travel down the head. And you ask a great question and literally they're telling you about all the reasons why it's not possible. And it's like, man, they're giving so much emphasis and so much energy to it. It's literally causing them to spin over and over and over again. And I always think like, what if they were to spend that much time and energy thinking about what they want to create and the impact it's going to make and what kind of things it's going to make possible for them and for their family and for the world? What would happen if they literally just flipped that switch? And it's a game changer when it happens, right? It's one of those things where when you understand a little bit of how your mind works, you can play into that. You can use affirmations. You can make sure you're getting coached by people. You can make sure you're in the right room with the right people, right? And they're pushing you to grow, but it just makes sure that it's so much more of a flow. And the thing that I asked yesterday was like, what would it feel like, because I was able to get her into her peak state, right? What would it feel like if you woke up every day and you were like, this is why I always flow through. This is just my subconscious. It happens automatically. And she said, my entire life would be changed. I'm like, then let's do that. Let's definitely do that. Because when I can ask you some questions, you can definitely duplicate them. So that way you can stay in that peak state, and stuff is so much easier when they're in that peak state. And when you're not in that peak state, even the smallest things can seem like the biggest mountain in the world. Wow, guys, that was crazy. And that was just the first 9 chapters. There are, I don't know, maybe 9 more chapters. I know there's like 18 total chapters. I want to hear from you guys. Which of these was the most powerful so far? One more identity, one more in living in your matrix, one more try, one more in the 5 principles of time management, one more emotion, one more association, one more dream, one more question to ask ourselves, or one more goal. What is your focus going to be for this week? If you could pick one of those, what are you going to remind yourself of, and how are you going to do it? You're going to plug it into your phone. You're going to have like some way of like giving you a reminder. You're going to write it on a Post-it note. Like, which one are you going to be focused on, and how are you going to remind yourself of it? All right, let me go back and read some of these comments. One thing I really focus on this chapter: identify your triggers. Yes, being able to identify your triggers is like solving problems in advance. I was actually on a one-on-one coaching call right before this, and that's one of the things I was telling her. Is I was like, hey, listen, when you have this feeling of being stuck in your business, you have to identify what the trigger is that gets you to think that you're stuck, because that is going to be that thing where you can solve it in advance. So when it comes up next time, you can go, wait, I know this is the trigger that makes me feel stuck in my business, so that you stop believing that story of being stuck and instead do something else entirely different. So being able to figure out what your triggers are, and also helping other people that you lead identify their triggers, is huge, because it helps you solve the problem in advance. The DISC assessment is awesome. To learn how to communicate with each other. In this process, we are learning our triggers and others' triggers. Yes, it's so important to be able to learn everybody else's too. Let's see. This is exactly what my coach said yesterday, pointed out. What you are thinking is what you are becoming, 100%. If we only focus on the possibilities, limiting beliefs, yeah, I know. We can accomplish anything we want through taking one more intentional step. Yes, I love that, Ed. I love that, love that. Okay, guys. Great freaking call today. Thank you so much, very much, for recommending this book. I know this is like the 2nd or 3rd time that I've read it, but it's so powerful to even revisit it, because there's certain things that like spoke to me this time that didn't even speak to me last time. But I appreciate you guys so much for being a part of the group. Definitely continue to read the book. We're going to finish it out. We actually might have 2 more calls. So not next Thursday, but the following Thursday, we'll be back on. If you're watching this and you're not a part of our actual book club, it is completely free right now. If you go to modernleadership.us/book club, that is where we have all the details. We appreciate you so much. You guys keep crushing it. And if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Appreciate you for what you do out there. And for everybody in the inner circle, super proud of you, to have you in the group, to have you on the team, and to be and to help me personally raise that thermostat. I appreciate you for doing that too. All right. All right. You guys have an incredible week, and I'll see you guys really soon. All right. All right. Bye.